Hey YouTube, it's Stacy Celeste and I'm back with you guys with another video. I wanted to do a quick November reading wrap-up video. I will be doing these types of sit-down videos every month, a wrap-up and then possibly a TBR, but my TBR is like rolling. It changes greatly throughout the month, so I may or may not do one like that, but I'll definitely hit you guys with a reading wrap up every month. And so today's video is just that. It's just my November reading wrap up, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. All right, so the first two books that I'm going to mention are two books that I went into super detail with because they are my first and my second reading vlogs on this channel, which also are my first and second videos on this channel. So those are, first of all, The Middle Game by Shauna McGuire, and then also I have The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. Like I said, both of these books are reading vlogs on this channel. I will link them below. If you want to know more about what I felt about the books, what the books were about in general, please watch those vlogs and let me know what you guys think. The next book that I want to talk about is Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. This book I finished early in the month, very early in the month. I started it actually in October and finished it like first or second day of November. So it's a November read. Legendborn is about a young lady named Bree Matthews whose mother passes away tragically in a car accident, and she decides to go and, well, not necessarily decides, but she had already gotten into an early career program or early college program, a residential program at University of North Carolina. And at first her mom was very hesitant about letting her go, but she decides to go after her mother's passing, mainly to just kind of get away from her dad and kind of figure things out. I would say maybe just cope from that type of tragedy. While at University of North Carolina, she comes across this secret society called the Legendborn, and she gets engulfed in the society as she finds out that she actually has some magical abilities herself. She also is starting to find more and more about kind of the circumstances of her mother's death, and it gets more and more into that, and there's a lot of twists and a lot of turns. There's a love triangle in this book, and yeah, so I enjoyed reading this book. This is a very popular book online, so a lot of people talk about this book on YouTube, on BookTube. It was very highly touted. I was underwhelmed by the book after finishing the book, just because I think I had a lot of expectations coming into the book. So when I first finished the book, I was like, okay, I'm gonna give this book 3 stars. It just, nothing, like, I read it and it was definitely readable, but nothing was just giving me like, oh my gosh, I like just super excitement, like I, kind of wanted to get, I guess. But I did kind of like the love triangle. It is a YA, a young adult fantasy, so it is kind of, like cheesy a little bit, but I did really like it. There's one character in here that I'm really intrigued to see what happens with him in the next book. But yeah, I slept on the book. So right after I read it, I gave it the 3 stars. And then I slept on the book. And then when I woke up in the morning, I was like, okay, I think I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. And the reason being is that I really just missed reading the book. So I didn't really understand how much I was really enjoying this book when I was reading it, because I was so like caught up in it being not what I was expecting it to be. All right, so I'm not sure where I stopped. My dad called me, so I got a little distracted. But ultimately, I think this book is a solid first book for a fantasy, multi-book fantasy. I don't know how many fantasy. I don't know if it'll be a trilogy or a duology. I'm not sure. I guess I could look that up. But I know the next book is scheduled to come out. I think they pushed it out to like November. So it's definitely, I think, a solid first book, but I definitely will see what happens in the second book and if it picks up or not. So Legendborn by Tracy Deonn, I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. I enjoyed reading the book. a little bit underwhelmed, but I think for a YA fantasy book, it's definitely a solid read that I can definitely recommend if you want to have a good time and get kind of lost in a different world. All right, so the next book that I finished, sort of in that same, not sort of, very much so in the same genre. It's a YA fantasy, and that is Daughters of Neri. First of all, I mean, I think both of these books we can say the same thing. And I actually got another book with a beautiful cover. Like the covers on these books, y'all, breathtaking. Breathtaking. Daughters of Neri is set in Western Africa, a region in Western Africa, a fantasy region in Western Africa. And it's essentially about these two twins who are separated at birth. Sinai, who lives in the city or the urban palatial palace area of the region, and then Nala, who lives out in the outskirts in a village and was raised out in a village in the same region. Um, I honestly, it's kind of hard to give a synopsis over this book because I think the second book will kind of bridge a lot of the gaps. But essentially, there's a ruler who rules the whole entire region. His name is the Easy. Is Easy E. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right or wrong, or Sinai or Nala. I may be saying their names wrong. Correct me if I'm saying them wrong, but Easy basically stole his power from these gods that lived years ago and whom Nala and Sinai are descendants of, in a sense. So they hold a power that was essentially supposed to be gotten rid of by the Easy years ago, and they have no clue that they have this power or any abilities. So basically, you go on a back and forth journey of their lives. So it's a split narrative. You go one chapter with Nala, you go another chapter with Sinai, and at the end of the book, they do meet. I don't want to say too much more because I really don't want to give it away. A lot of the world building is it's a little bit slow, and you kind of have to put it together and put it together and put it together. It does take a while for things to kind of hit the fan. It's like a lot of buildup. But I will say what was kind of different about this particular fantasy than like Middle Game, for instance, that was pretty constant throughout the whole book, is that there is some uptick moments. And I kind of like the characterization. I do like the characters. So I like Nala. Sinai's a little different. Interestingly enough, I was reading some reviews of this book after I had finished the book. And one of the people that reviewed the book, they called out a potential love or potential LGBTQ relationship that would have been chef's kiss in this book. And they missed it. It wasn't in there, but that person like called it out that they should have been together, and I was like, yeah, they should have had a little romance spark, but that didn't happen, at least not in the first book. Maybe in the second book it'll happen, I don't know, but it was definitely an opportunity there. But yeah, so overall, what I feel about this book, I think I gave it 3.5 stars. I did really like the book. I honestly liked the length of the book. It didn't drag on. It got to the point. I think this was a little over 300 pages. So it's definitely a book that I read in a few days. And something you could probably read in a weekend if you spent a lot of time reading, which is kind of not to be said in a lot of fantasy books that are like over 500 pages long. So I did really like that. I liked the characters, and I felt like the pace of the book was good. I think that it's just like Legendborn. I think that it's a good first book. I think that I enjoyed the plot and I enjoyed the characters a little bit more than I did in Legendborn. So that's where that 0.5 star came, like right off the bat, even though I did end up giving Legendborn also 3.5 stars. But I think right off the bat, I think I did, like as I was reading, I think I did really enjoy Sinai, Nala, and the two different lives and perspectives a little bit more. But that may change. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed this book. I recommend it. It's a solid first book in a series, and yeah, check out the next book. I think that the next book is out, so I think I might listen to it because I think I have it on audiobook. But yeah, 3.5 stars for Daughters of Neri. All right, so the next book is also a book with a absolutely stunning cover. I've been getting lucky with these stunning covers, but the next book is a book that I actually reread, and I listened to it on audiobook this time. The first time I went through this book, I just actually read the book without audiobook. This time I did do the actual audiobook, and that is 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. Y'all, this is one of my favorite books this year that I've read. So essentially, this book is about two writers, Eva, who is a erotica, like this dark erotica writer. She has a series that has like 14 or 15 books. And yeah, it's one of those supermarket books. And it's how she makes her money, right? It's how she makes her money. She also has a young daughter named Audrey, she's super dope. I do really enjoy Audrey. She's such a rambunctious, smart 12-year-old, and I love Eva and their relationship as well in this. Eva does suffer from like a debilitating migraine. So she gets very, very painful migraines, and she had a very, very interesting life, a very, very interesting upbringing that kind of brought her to where she is at the start of this book. Shane, on the other hand, is a Booker Award winning author. He's a literary fiction author, very highly touted, very highly respected author who is very mysterious, and he's had a lot of drinking problems, so he's been addicted to different things. So he's very flawed individual, very mysterious individual, but has this impeccable books that he's written and is super duper popular. He also, even probably more so than Eva, has had a very tumultuous upbringing and has been through a whole lot. And their paths crossed initially a long time ago, and that's all I'll say. And then they cross again in this book, and they have 7 Days in June together. And y'all, this book is just, I loved it. I think the one thing that probably I think takes away from the book is there's a lot of pop culture references in the book. There's a lot of there's Issa Rae, there's Black Panther, there's Michelle Obama, there's a slew of other, Homecoming, I think, Lemonade, no, not Homecoming, Lemonade was in this book as well. There's like so many pop culture references that I don't know how this is going to age. It works now. I think it was published in 2019. I believe 2019. It might have been 2020. Oh no, this was published in 2021. So, but I think they referenced 2019 in the book. So this is definitely a new book, and it resonates perfectly fine with me because I know every pop culture reference, I knew what it was. This is definitely written for Black women. Like it's written for people. Not saying that it's not written for other people, but it's definitely written from the perspective of a Black woman living in the Western world. So not necessarily African American, but even British or people in the Western world that have been around some of these pop culture references. I think it's written more in the vein of that's the audience. So there's a lot of people that may have picked this book up, especially since it's on the Reese Witherspoon book club, that may not have been able to resonate with it as much as somebody like me would have resonated with it. But I think that it's just the audience is not for everybody. It's not for everybody. But I think the core of it is these two very flawed, very not perfect, but brilliant individuals that are just trying to do life. They're trying to do life, and they come together, and to me, it's very beautiful, them together. So I ended up giving this book 4.5 stars. I couldn't give it 5 stars because I felt like some of the pop culture, like some of the stuff was just a little forced to me, a little unnecessary, and I couldn't give it that 5 stars, but I absolutely loved reading it the first time. I absolutely loved listening to the narrator in the audiobook. I will definitely say, which is so strange, is that like the audiobook, like a lot of times when you read something first and then you listen to the audiobook, the people and the characters don't sound how you have them sounding in your mind. And sometimes they sound better, sometimes they don't sound good. But I will say that the characters sounded so much like what I heard, like the voice of the person in the audiobook. It was so, the only thing I didn't get right was Eva's real name. So Eva's full name is Janvier. I kept saying Genevieve or something like that. So her real name was Janvier, and that's the only thing that I picked up in the audiobook. But other than that, the voice of the voice of the audiobook was so good. It matched what I thought it would match. Like it was just a beautiful experience to read it the 2 times. I would definitely probably read this again. I just love the love in here, and I think I love flawed characters being in love. Because I think a lot of times you see people and on the outside, they just look perfect. They just have this perfection about them, or they fit in these boxes. And these 2 people, yes, they're both attractive. And I visualize them attractive, and you see on the cover they're both attractive, or you can kind of see that. So they have that physical, like you put 2 attractive people together and you make a romance novel. But I think that their lives and the things that they've been through just kind of make them more well-rounded than you might get in a certain romance novel or romance book. So overall, 4.5 stars. I absolutely adored this book. And yeah, 7 Days in June by T.O. Williams. All right, you guys, we're on the last book, and it's actually a book of poetry. I had it on my shelf for the longest, and I decided to pick it up like at the end of the month, and I read it like in one sitting. And it's the only book this month that I gave 5 stars to, and that is Tupac, A World of the Rose That Grew from the Concrete. This is a collection of about 72 of Tupac Shakur's poems that he wrote prior to him blowing up and being the Tupac that we know today. That we all know the story of him. So I want to say that these poems were written when he was between the ages of like 19 and 21, which honestly adds layers onto why I feel like this is that he was so brilliant. Because I think that the vulnerability in this, in his poetry, especially his poems around love, around how he felt about his mother, how he felt about his lovers. I think that it's an openness and a vulnerability that we don't get to see from people, but let alone men, let alone Black men. So his ability to do this, and this is before now where I think we have more conversations around being vulnerable and and holding space for men, men of color, Black men, to be vulnerable and be able to express themselves, and not always have to be hard, and not always have to be, this person that's like, impenetrable. I feel like he was way before his time. And I think there's certain poems in here that almost brought me to a tear. This is definitely a book that I will reread, share. You can see I dog-eared a lot of the poems. I will share maybe one of these that I loved. And this one is, Love is Just Complicated. You asked me to communicate what it is I feel within. I search for words to assist, but I find none to help me begin. I guess love is just complicated. Love is just complicated. I thought I knew my heart's desire. I thought I quenched my burning fire. I thought I wanted A, but A was too mixed up with B. Then C made me more confused, so A turned me off, and B feels better. C is upset and lonely. And me, I think love is complicated. Love is complicated. So, I mean, even that, like, such a simple poem, but understanding the context of the person that's giving the poem, that's writing the poem, the youth, you know, and then honestly, I think that he has always been portrayed as like a gangster rapper, all these things. But anybody that even listens to some of his music, you'll hear that he was more than that. He was more than these things. And I think that that's one of the things that they said in the foreword, because there's a foreword, an introduction by his mother. And then also one of the people that worked really close to him, I think, managed him early on. They do some writing here, and I just think this is a beautiful book, a beautiful ode to a beautiful life. I will read the last one too, because the last one was also extremely beautiful, and it's called "In the Event of My Demise." I would say not even beautiful, but it's just like knowing what happened to him and him writing this book. I mean, writing a poem like this in the early part of his career before all the things that happened is kind of eerie, and it definitely it hits home. So it's called in the Event of My Demise, dedicated to those curious. In the event of my demise, when my heart can beat no more, I hope I die for a principle or a belief that I had lived for. I will die before my time because I feel the shadow's depth. So much I wanted to accomplish before I reach my death. I have come to grips with the possibility and wiped the last tear from my eyes. I loved all who were positive in the event of my demise. And that's another thing. They have like his actual writing in the book, and all of the poems are his actual writing, and then the writing here to kind of help you read and navigate the words. But I just thought this was an excellent book, something that I definitely will keep close to me and have on my shelf forever and ever and ever. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I look forward to continuing to put out more and more content. And yeah, I will talk to you guys in the next video. Peace out. Bye, guys.